So, hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me this afternoon. It's late afternoon, and I know that we had a lot of amazing talks today, and I hope you enjoyed the conference so far. My talk isn't technical, just to warn you on that, but we are in the late afternoon, so we can kind of walk through the metric a little bit more. So first of all, who am I and why I'm here today? I'm Emma, and I'm based in London. I'm a cloud security architect at EPAM, and my role is a consultant. So I love design and architect everything in the cloud for my clients. So EPAM is a technology consultancy with strong engineering focus. So we help our clients to accelerate and integrate security into their digital transformation program. Outside of work, I'm also volunteering at the Women in Cybersecurity UK and I affiliate, and I'm also volunteered at the University of Buckingham. So today I'm going to talk about metrics. We don't have that many audience here, but I would like to ask this question. So how many of you think that you have a well-defined metric program in your company? That is interesting. And that is quite expecting as well. So that's why I'm here today. So there are 3 questions I'm aiming to answer today. Why are metrics important in the conversation about cloud security? And what metrics matters to you and your business and your security team? And how can you establish effective and meaningful metrics for your cloud security environment? So this is the agenda for today. We have quite a lot of information to go through. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. So yeah, I hope we can finish within the given time. So at the end of the talk, I'm going to talk about some fun thing about my project that I have done in the past for my clients. A couple of case studies, just pointing to, the different techniques and best practices that we adopted to establish KPIs. So this is a definition of cloud security metrics. It's very simple. So just a simple Google search that gives me this definition. To be honest, cloud security metrics, don't overthink it. It's actually literally everything in multiple domains. Instant response, identity access management, software development, and so on. You name it. Anything that's within cybersecurity remits are cloud related. So what are the big metric programs? So in my experience with a lot of customers, 90% of them have prioritized security metrics as part of their security program, but they all struggle to take on actions. So why is that? So these are the problems. Firstly, there is a disconnection between security and business goals, and maybe the board might not see the relevance, or the team do not have the budget or the tools to track and collect and handle the metrics. So just a little bit explanation of what is a gaming metrics. So metrics that makes your security program look good. You kind of program and manipulate them to make it look good for the board. You probably have similar experience. I don't want to call something out, but yeah, you have that in your mind. And sometimes it's just difficult to adapt to the threat landscape as we have, for example, now we have the Gen AI risk, and how can we adapt our metrics to different kind of technologies so it won't be outdated once we have facing the new threat. So these are all the, potential security, potential metric problems. So what are the benefits of tracking metrics and why do we track it? So this is not about just measuring success and security, but more importantly, metrics is a tool to communicate your security risk to your senior stakeholders and management. So for example, you want to drive improvements in your security program. You want to measure the effectiveness of your tools, processes, and your security team. And you also want to track the security posture over time. So all these elements are translated into one thing, that is business risk reduction. So we all want to reduce business risk. At the end of the day, why do we secure our infrastructure? Why do we secure our cloud environment? Yeah, the answer is that we want to ultimately reduce the business risk. So before we dive deeper, I'm just going to clear up some confusions around metrics and KPIs. So these two terms are used interchangeably, but there are some key differences. Metrics are simply measurement, snapshot of what's happening right now. Think of them like, thermal reading. It tells you the current body temperature, but is not what it means for your health. On the other hand, KPIs are goal-oriented, which means they track your progress towards a specific target. So think of them like a fitness tracker telling you how close you are to your health status. So for example, mean time to remediate is a value that is given by calculation. And reduce that number by 25% within the next quarter is a KPI, because you set the target and it gives you something to aim for. So that is the key differences between the two. There are a number of ways to design your metric program. I won't be, for the time constraint, I won't be providing details about them, because each organization is different in terms of their process. But this is the 7th step I would recommend to define and follow in terms of establishing a metric program. So how to identify metrics? I've listed here some questions that you can throw out there to get you started, to think about, who's going to be the target audience for your metric. So if you are showing a metric for your CISO or senior management, it would be different to showing the metrics to someone in the cloud ops. And there are some misconceptions about metrics. Some people think that metrics are just for CISO and CIO or, senior management, but actually security team needs to keep up with the metrics in order to achieve improve security posture. And also actionable outcome. So you want metrics that don't just measure, but also provide clear insight into where the security can be improved. We talk about adaptability in terms of threat landscape change. And also, your metric needs to have a context. It tells a story about the fact that about your security posture and what to measure. Some of the key metrics criteria, there are so many frameworks that you can refer to. I won't go into detail of them, but the two things I would like to emphasize on is actionable and outcome driven. So actionable, why is that important? Organization can identify areas where security efforts can fall short. So we can take corrective actions to address those root causes. So metrics needs to be actionable. And outcome driven means that, if the metrics can be reflecting how effective the security policies are followed or enforced, so we can have an actual actionable outcome based on that metrics. So now we have, we now understand what is qualified as a key metrics. Then how can we identify the KPIs? Because KPIs is another thing, remember. It's different to metrics. So I have two approaches. Let me go through one of the approach is called top-down approach. So basically, you define the bigger picture of your business goals, business drivers. What do you want to achieve? Is it to increase your revenue or achieve or compliance with regulatory requirements? So with the information, you can define KPI, and then you can look at how to measure that. So these are your tools and processes. So you get those metrics from your tools. On the other hand, the bottom-up approach is the other way around. But there's a thing important about the bottom-up approach. It starts with collecting the data points or metrics from the tools and processes, and then and then work all the way up to defining the metrics and the KPIs. And then at the end, because sometimes you can't, if you define the KPI at the first instance, then you might not be able to find the right tools to actually establish that KPI. So that's why sometimes bottom-up approach is more appropriate. So which one's better? So depending on the different organization and scenarios. So ideally, I think it's a combination of two. Yeah. So just a bit of on the causal loop diagram. So I guess some of you might already heard about causal loop diagram, but because it has been applied for different other cases. A causal loop diagram in the metrics world can highlight the positive and negative feedback loops. So we can understand the dynamics of a system and the relationship between metrics. So by understanding that, we go beyond just looking at individual metrics, so we can explore how they interact and influence each other. So just a basic about the causal loop diagram. So we have the metrics as a single individual data point, and then they are consist of set of nodes which are variables and which are our metrics, and edges and with the arrows telling you the direction of the influence between different variables, just like the one on the left-hand side. So the positive sign indicates a direct relationship where an increase in one variable leads to an increase in another variable. And the minus sign shows an inverse relationship, which is the other way around. So, for example, mean time to detect and mean time to triage, mean time to detect the number of security incidents and mean time to detect, they are forming a loop here. That's because when we have too much security incidents, we take longer time to detect the security incident. And sometimes that relationship can be changed depending on the situation. So by discussing those relationship between those metrics, we can identify the most important metrics for our system. So this is an example that I would like to explain of how to use that. So on my left-hand side, I have a diagram which shows a typical infrastructure as code workflow. So you have the infrastructure as code template stored in the GitHub, and sometimes you scan the codes, and every time when you spin up a resource in your environment, that gets to be evaluated and applied. The configuration will be applied for your environment. So there's a few metrics that I identify from that workflow. So these are just a few metrics. I don't want to include everything because it can be quite big. But what I want to demonstrate here is the relationship between those metrics that I have identified. So the question is, what are the ideal candidates for our key metrics? So look at the policy violation rate and the average time to remediate. So as you can see, they have multiple incoming relationship influence, which influences so they are influenced by a multiple data relationship, but they are not a direct influencer themselves. So they are quite quantifiable and measurable. So they might be our key metrics and KPIs. So by understanding the relationship between different metrics, we can prioritize which ones are the most important to or critical to monitor and improve. So this is how we identify the key metrics in this instance by following the causal loop diagram. Now I would like to explain a little bit about the protection level agreement. So this is another approach that, like another technique that I've applied before with my clients. So now we have identified our key metrics. How about establishing a target? So this approach, protection level agreement, is actually researched and published by Gartner. So it's a tool provides a way to translate security into the language of business. So if you think about it like a service level agreement, but an agreement of protection between the security team and the business stakeholder or leaders in your business. So a business decide the amount of budget they would like to invest into protecting certain cloud environment, and the security team can align their efforts with the level of protection. So this is crucial to balance the business needs and the security requirements given the understanding of your risk appetite. So how does this work? This is there is a 5-step process. So we want to figure out what actually matters to the business and what are the risk appetites level, and then we look at what we've got in the cloud environment. So here we've done like an inventory of our cloud environment, and then we identify which one is most critical. Then we discuss with the business and determine the desired protection level for those critical assets. And then we map the security controls to with the appropriate protection level. At the end of it, we establish the PLA, the protection level agreement, using those outcome-driven metrics. So this is what it puts into like a practice in real life. So in this slides, we use PLA to prioritize remediation effort. So think about time to patch your vulnerabilities. So here we have like a scope, which is the different markets, like consumer insurance and an internal scope. And within those different scopes, we also have different systems. We have critical system, we have other internal systems. And we define PLA, which is the number of days to patch based on the criticality of those systems. So after a month, we observe what actually come out from that, implementing that protection level agreement. Then we'd realize some of those scope required more time to implement, longer time to patch, and some of them require less time to patch. So here we now have the decision that available to our security team. So we either can increase our budget, so we speak to the business leader, and we can increase our budget, or we can adjust the protection level to a lower one by accepting some risk in the gap of the patching. So this tells us, what are the gaps between the current state and the defined or the agree goals that we have discussed with our business leader. So this is a conversation between the security team and the business. Now, I'd like to kind of show you some example of our metrics that I've identified for my past project. I would call it, this is probably the fun part, because we have go over all the best practices and techniques. So the first case study is a energy supply operations company. So they have the requirements to have uptime of SLA requirement of 99%, and the goal is to leverage clouds for operational efficiency, and they are on their journey to the cloud. They have a small SecOps team, but they don't have clear defined roles and responsibilities. Their key problem here is they have over 70 metrics in their systems, but they are struggle to identify the KPIs. After a conversation with my clients, and I found out that they would like to present the KPIs to their board, like the senior management and the CIOs. So understanding that is the requirement for our metrics, then we can work on how to prioritize KPIs to meet that, to reporting to the board. So I would like to show you some of the bad example of the KPIs that they have established initially, but doesn't quite work. So, for example, the number of incidents or vulnerability and alerts detected. I know that a lot of you probably familiarized with that because we all track that in our systems, right? And then we present it to the CISO, the CIO, and they will ask, what does that mean? What does the number mean? It doesn't give me an action. So it doesn't really give you in the context of how to, what is the context of the risk and how much investment the security is actually needed. And sometimes we have false positive in our systems, right? In our security tools. So by simply tracking that would not be something that's actionable. Another example would be, the vulnerability metrics based on the CVSS score. As we know, the CVSS score are used by a lot of vulnerability management systems for their risk scoring. By only tracking that, it would not give a more realistic view of whether those vulnerabilities are actually being exploited in the wild. So we need a better tool than just simply tracking those metrics. Just, apologies in advance for a lot of content in this page here. But the idea is, please don't copy this because these are only applied for my clients. So for each of the companies, we need a different story. So, for example, in this specific case, they would like to understand the security posture and the KPIs are for the board. So what we have suggested is to have the CSPM, the Cloud Security Posture Management Score. So if you are using Cloud Security Management Score, Cloud Security Posture Management tool, you know that we have a security score that is called a CSPM score. So we can set a target of 80%, and also we can lower that target for a specific project. For example, some critical projects might require a higher score, and for some not critical projects that requires the minimum standard, and we establish the minimum standards of 60%. Another good example would be the coverage. We want to know that what other production cloud workload are aligned with the approved security baseline. So that is one of the, an example of the actionable outcome. So by tracking that, we know that the amount of the cloud workload that is not aligned, and we can identify what is the issues associated with that, causing that gap. So these are the other metrics that we have included in the project to track. And to be honest, the board only needs 6 on their dashboard. They don't need all 70. So that's why we want to identify and prioritize the important KPIs. This is the second example. I'm just gonna quickly go through this. So this is a much smaller company, and they have experienced security issues in the past, and they would like to establish a DevSecOps culture and shifting the left on their application security. So what we have found in this case is they have a lot of tools. They have SaaS, DaaS, and backlog management tools. So what we have suggested here is the bottom-up approach, because the fact that they have a lot of tools and they don't know why they track the metrics. So we started by looking at those tools that they have and what kind of metrics they have collected. And then we use the causal loop diagram to establish the relationship between those metrics. Then we identify what other metrics are actually influenced by a lot of other metrics that can be something that's significant. So at the end of it, we establish some metrics that focus on their application security, focus on their cloud workload, because they would like to understand how efficient their team is going to is fixing the issues from the scans. So that's why we have tracked, for example, the production codes passed automatic security and quality test. So that is something that they would like to track. Another thing about it is those metrics are not for the board. So in this case, they would like to show them the metrics to their developers and the cloud ops team. So that's why we focus on getting those compliance scores in place as well. And sometimes even the audience change in this case, they can still be useful for those board people. So yeah, so this is just an example of the potential metrics that we could establish. So what is the EPSS? So as before, we have mentioned about CBSS might have a gap. So the EPSS is a probability score between 0 and 1 and represents the likelihood of exploitation. So the coverage is a percentage depending on your risk tolerance and resource constraint. So there's a balance between the efficiency and the coverage that you would like to have for your vulnerability management. So the higher the EPSS threshold, the higher the efficiency and the lower the coverage. So that's the kind of the trade-off. So there's just an example of the EPSS that I have used it to in the patching example. So we use the EPSS to further improve our KPI. So we only track for some company that they might have a lower, they might have a higher security tolerance level. We can define a EPSS score of 70%. So we only track those ones that actually have a higher score. However, just bear in mind, EPSS also have a drawback because you have to constantly trace, because the threats can be changed over time. So you have to constantly getting the new feeds from the EPSS system into your management of vulnerability management tools. So the advice is to automate that process. Okay, so we are nearing the end of the talk. It's on my page here. It's just some suggestion of the tools where you can collect your metrics. It's pretty much everything in the cloud, as you can see it. And these are some of the examples we have either recommended or I've just simply putting it here for the prettiness of the slide. And so those are the metrics. So in terms of tracking your metrics, you also need to have visualization tools. These are the visualization tools that would be quite good to start with. Okay, so here's our key takeaways. Just a few tips to get you started on the metric program. So firstly, KPI is not just for security teams, they are the business decisions. So align your metrics with your organization's specific goals and risk tolerance is very important. And there's no one-size-fits-all solution. So you need to customize your metrics to your unique environment and needs. Use the protection level agreement to shift responsibility from security to your organization's business decision maker. So your metrics should also tell a story about your security posture and the progress over time. And finally, don't get lost in the number. We want to look for trends and patterns and the actionable insights from that metrics, and start with something small and grow to something bigger. So otherwise you get too overwhelming. So that's my talk. I guess there's no time for questions, but yeah, welcome to ask me in person if you like. Sorry.
Have a couple of minutes if you want.
Oh.